her late 80s and suffers from dementia. She is in very poor health. Her aunt has no idea that her late husband fathered a child 60 years ago while they were married. My wife is close to her 4 cousins who are not aware that they have a half-sister. I believe that my wife should let them know about Meg. If it was me, I would want to know if my father had sired another child and that I have a half-sibling out there. My wife feels just the opposite and will not tell them. Who is right? Signed, Curious About Cousins. Dear Curious, I believe you're right. However, importantly, you and I don't share DNA with your wife or her cousin, and so while we have the right to our opinions, that's about all we have. DNA testing has exploded in popularity, and questions about the unforeseen personal and relational complications arising from it have flooded my inbox. We are in fairly uncharted territory, but the truth is the truth, and people deserve to know the truth about themselves. I have long advocated against holding on to family secrets, mainly because people who keep secrets are basically deciding for themselves who is deserving of the truth. I realize that people keeping secrets are often well-meaning, as I assume your wife is, but I also believe that most people can handle the truth, even if it is surprising, shocking, or painful. For instance, you and your wife don't really know whether her aunt knew about her uncle's infidelity. The aunt may have kept it a secret. In this case, your wife has met a person, Meg, who is so wonderful that they have become close friends, and yet your wife is denying her cousins the opportunity to also know her. Your wife may be waiting for her aunt to die before disclosing this news to her cousins. The same DNA testing and social media that brought her and Meg together can also eventually lead Meg to her other half-siblings. Your wife should consider how her cousins will feel when they learn that she has had a secret relationship with their own sister. Dear Amy, my wife's sister is getting married in 5 months. Both my sister-in-law and her fiancé come from cultures that are not accepting of homosexuality. I've only spent a few weeks total around my sister-in-law's fiancé, but after a few meetings, I started getting an impression that he might be attracted much more to men than to women. He doesn't seem overly physically affectionate, and sometimes he seems downright aversive to my sister-in-law, while I've seen him to be quite physically affectionate to old male friends. I like and respect him as a person, and he genuinely seems to mostly treat my sister-in-law well. I've talked with my wife about this, and both of us are utterly unsure if we should do anything, and if so, what we might do. Any thoughts on how best to proceed? Signed, Utterly Unsure. Dear Unsure, congratulations. You are about to have a new in-law, and congratulations. You don't need to have an opinion or do anything at all regarding his sexuality. He might be straight, but acculturated to maintaining a physical distance from women. He might be gay and closeted for cultural or other reasons. Your sister-in-law might be straight or gay and marrying for love or for cultural or financial reasons. The beauty is that unless your in-laws solicit your opinion on their marriage, you can and should accept this couple at face value. Dear Amy, Stuck in the Middle said her best friend gave her adult kid's violin away to Stuck's son. Now the adult kids are pressuring her to get it back. Thank you for telling people that parents are not responsible for keeping their kids' stuff forever. Signed, Grateful. Dear Grateful, yes, our adult children might prefer that we maintain their rooms as shrines and their possessions as treasured museum pieces. But at some point, if the kids don't claim their stuff, ownership reverts back to the parents. Jim?
All right. From the Lincoln Journal-Star. Brian Boitano is a lifelong Californian. He's traveled around the world in his career as an Olympic and professional ice skater. But for the food and drink menu at the Kindler Hotel, his focus is on Lincoln and the state. Everything that we do is a tip of the hat to Nebraska, said Boitano, the 1988 Olympic gold medalist in men's figure skating. These days, Boitano is a TV food personality who also happens to have a part-time side job, designing the food and drink menus at the Kindler, a boutique hotel at 11th and P Street that's set to open next week. He made his second visit to Lincoln this week to help finalize the menu and train staff for the aptly named Boitano's Lounge. Boitano has come up with nearly 36 signature cocktails for the hotel, all of which will have some sort of local twist. The bar also will serve Nebraska wines and craft beers, in addition to national and international brands. Boitano's Lounge also has a full kitchen, and though it isn't billed as a restaurant, the menu is substantial enough to be a meal, Boitano said. Food dishes also will have a local focus, using meats raised on Nebraska farms, as well as local produce and cheeses. The hotel even will have its own signature ice cream flavor from 402 Creamery. And of course, we're incorporating corn wherever we can, Boitano said. He said he'll put his stamp on the dishes, and some will have an Italian element to them, owing to his heritage. It's kind of comfort food, Boitano said. I like it to be accessible for everyone. The Kindler, which has been in development for more than 2 years, will officially open August 22nd. Nick Castana and his wife Brooke, a Lincoln native, developed the 49-room hotel. In addition to Boitano's Lounge, the hotel also offers a fitness center, business center, and event space. It has both rooms and suites with queen and king beds. Each room has a refrigerator, coffee maker, safe, and Wi-Fi access. Also out of Lincoln, Lincoln officials are looking up the road to their Omaha counterparts as they prepare to welcome dockless, electric rental scooters to the city later this year. Lincoln Lancaster Planning Department Director David Carey said he's working with the Transportation and Utilities Department to craft rules to govern the companies that might bring the transportation craze to the city. The City Council would be asked to adopt those rules. Those rules, if approved in an ordinance, would set the parameters for how the scooters would operate in Lincoln. The scooters are generally left in the right-of-way on sidewalks, then rented using a smartphone app. Nationwide, some cities have banned them, confiscated them, and sued the companies that owned them after hundreds of operational scooters were dumped overnight in cities without warning. Some cities have added regulations after the scooters arrived. Atlanta recently banned electric scooters during nighttime hours after 4 riders died in crashes with vehicles since May. We definitely want to roll out the thing in a more controlled fashion, Carey said. Scooter sharing companies have expressed interest in coming to Lincoln, but Carey declined to say which companies. But taking an approach similar to Omaha's may iron out some wrinkles, he said. In January, Omaha officials announced their pilot project for scooter sharing and regulations for up to 3 companies to operate March through November. There, the selected companies must pay $10,000 for a permit to participate in the project, plus pay the city 50 cents per day per scooter and 5 cents per day for each ride. Each company can have up to 500 shared scooters in Omaha during the project, with an option for 500 more. The companies Lime and Spin operate scooters in Omaha, and they've increased the number of scooters they offer there since the project began. Users track scooters for rent through a smartphone app that locates them using GPS. A 10-minute ride costs about $2 to $3. In Omaha, as in Lincoln, motorized vehicles aren't supposed to be operated on city sidewalks, and that's been an issue in Omaha. Since it started enforcement May 20th, the Omaha Police Department has ticketed 45 scooter riders and issued another 61 warnings, according to the department. Most of the tickets and all of the warnings were for driving on the sidewalk.
Well, we'll turn now to business and markets, and boy, talk about a crazy week on the stock market. It's way down today. The Dow right now is off 620 points at 25,659. The Nasdaq's down 219 points at 77.97. And the New York Stock Exchange is off 298 points at 12,427. What a wild week. In business briefs from David City, Nebraska, a plant in David City that makes electrical wiring assemblies will close, putting almost 200 people out of work. The Lincoln Journal-Star reports that Fargo Assembly said that it will close the plant. The closure means that 186 full-time workers and 3 part-time workers will lose their jobs by November 29. The company is based in Fargo, North Dakota. David City Mayor Alan Zavodny expressed shock and disappointment at the closure. David City has a population of 2,900 people. Broadcast giant CBS Corporation and its corporate sibling Viacom Inc. on Tuesday finally agreed to reunite in a $12 billion deal that will bring together such well-known brands as CBS, MTV, Nickelodeon, and Showtime. CBS will absorb the smaller Viacom, which owns such assets as MTV, Nickelodeon, BET, Comedy Central, and Paramount Pictures Movie Studio in Hollywood. It's the latest in a wave of entertainment industry consolidations and was widely expected. And from Washington, U.S. consumer prices rose 0.3% in July, pushed higher by more expensive gas, medical care, and housing. The Consumer Price Index increased 1.8% compared with a year earlier, up from 1.6% in June. The Labor Department said Tuesday, excluding the food and energy categories, core prices moved up 0.3% in July and 2.2% from a year ago. The figures suggest that inflation is picking up slightly. Jim?
Okay. Some other news out of Washington. Child care costs in most states exceed federal subsidy payments provided to low-income parents, according to a newly released report from the Department of Health and Human Services Office of Inspector General, leaving working families with few affordable options. The report, released Tuesday, focuses on the Child Care Development Fund, an $8.2 billion block grant that goes toward offsetting the cost of care for 1.4 million children nationwide. The fund is the primary federal funding source for child care assistance for eligible working parents. The federal recommendation is that states provide payment rates at the 75th percentile, which allows eligible families to access 3 out of 4 providers without paying more out of the pocket. But the report shows most states set their rates much lower. States have discretion over how to administer the program. They set their own income requirements and decide how much families are expected to contribute. The report cites several reasons that states may keep their rates low, including stretching limited resources to serve more families and taking into consideration the cost of higher quality care. 19 states reported paying enrollment and registration fees for low-income families. And 7 states said they pay for extra child care activities such as field trips. And then we have a story here about out of Kansas and the implication it could have in the state of Nebraska. A fire that indefinitely closed a Tyson meat processing plant in Kansas could disrupt already strained processing operations, sparking fears from cattle producers who brace for tumbling market prices. Tyson has said it will reopen the plant, but the timeline will depend on the extent of the damage. Industry experts say the Holcomb, Kansas plant processes about 6,000 cattle a day, about 6% of all the cattle processed in the United States. In the first day of trading since Friday night's fire, cattle futures on Monday dropped $3 per 100 pounds, the maximum fluctuation allowed for a single day. On Tuesday, the maximum was expanded to $4.50 per 100 pounds, and prices had dropped to that level by 11 a.m. Anybody that had cattle that were not priced, that were waiting in the feedlot to be sold, their inventory already went down in value. so that kind of disruption has already occurred, said Glenn Tonzer, an agricultural economics professor at K-State University. Tyson said it intends to rebuild, but the extent of damages and timeline for restoring operations is unclear. We'll work to help our valued supplier partners find alternatives for their livestock during this ordeal, said Worth Sparkman, a spokesman for Tyson. It is difficult to assess the long-term impact without knowing how long the Holcomb plant will be down, Tonzer said. You're talking more hours, more shifts, pushing those plants harder. The cost to operate those other plants is going to go up because of labor and transportation. Cattle producers already were dealing with uncertainty from trade relations and rising corn prices, but the industry is large and diverse enough to withstand short-term disruption. We'll survive, Tonzer said, but it's going to require those adjustments, and there are economic consequences because of it. Some realism is important, but at the same time, it's not the sky is falling permanently either. The nearest Tyson plants to the Holcomb, Kansas one are in Amarillo, Texas, and Lexington, Nebraska, more than 200 miles away. So, tough break for the agricultural business.
Coca-Cola is putting its Dasani water brand into aluminum cans as the beverage industry faces pressure to reduce its use of plastic. Coke will start selling canned Dasani in the United States Northeast next month, with plans to expand the product to other parts of the country in 2020. The announcement comes after PepsiCo Inc. said recently it would experiment with selling Aquafina, its mainstream water brand, in cans at restaurants and stadiums. Beverage giants are under pressure to boost recycling and cut down on plastic, which is filling the world's oceans and waterways. Aluminum cans can contain more recycled material than plastic bottles and are less likely to float away in the ocean. Dasani and Aquafina are the top two bottled brands in the United States, with combined sales north of $2 billion. In addition to the can test, Coke is unveiling a new hybrid Dasani bottle with half of the materials from a combination of plants and recycled plastic. The company also said it's cutting down on the weight of its bottles in a bid to use less material.
Okay. Well, Bob, why don't we switch over to sports?
Sounds like an idea.
Here's an article from the Lincoln Journal-Star about volleyball. The Nebraska volleyball team is ranked number 2 in the AVCA preseason poll, which was released Tuesday, about 2.5 weeks before the first match of the season. This marks the 6th consecutive season that Nebraska has been ranked in the top 10 to start the season. The Huskers also ended last season ranked number 2 after finishing as the national runner-up with a 29-7 record. Stanford is ranked number 1. The Cardinal beat Nebraska in the national championship match last season. Stanford was the obvious number 1. The Cardinals returned 8 of the 9 players who played in the national championship match, including 3 first-team All-Americans: outside hitter Catherine Plummer, setter Jenna Gray, and libero Morgan Hens. Stanford had a record of 34 wins, 1 loss last season. Stanford received 62 of the 64 first-place votes in the poll. Nebraska and Penn State each received 1 first-place vote. Nebraska and Stanford will play in Lincoln during Week 4 of the season. The Huskers returned 5 starters from last year's team, including first-team All-American middle blocker Lauren Stivrins. Half of the top 10 teams in the preseason poll are from the Big Ten Conference, with number 2 Nebraska, number 3 Minnesota, number 5 Wisconsin, number 6 Illinois, and number 8 Penn State. 2 more Big Ten teams are in the top 20, with Michigan number 15, Purdue number 17. Minnesota won the Big Ten last season with a 19-1 record, but dropped in the AVCA poll after losing in the NCAA Sweet 16. Other than All-American setter Samantha Ziegler-Swenson, the Gophers returned most of the starting lineup. Creighton is ranked number 18 and is the team Nebraska will open the season against on August 30th. Louisville, led by former Husker Danny Busboom Kelly, is preseason ranked number 25. So volleyball upon us, it'll be an exciting year again.
Sounds like it. A true freshman walk-on was the talk of practice Tuesday, and he didn't even participate in the workout. If Luke Reimer was unsure about his impact midway through Nebraska's fall camp, all he had to do was eavesdrop on conversations on the second floor of the Hawks Center. His position coach doled out unsolicited praise. So did the senior star he plays behind. Other Huskers and coaches lit up when asked about the 6'1", 220-pound inside linebacker who spent last fall as a two-way wrecker at Lincoln North Star. They find different reasons for praise. Scott Frost's staff loves Reimer's knack for finding the football, even when his read is wrong. Teammates gush about his performance in Sunday's live scrimmage when he consistently pushed through obvious fatigue and blockers to gum up offensive plays. Sophomore defensive back Cam Taylor said he was one of the veteran defenders asking who number 28 was. Many nodded in agreement that the guy who turned down a scholarship at South Dakota State looked like he already had one in Lincoln. He's a walk-on, Taylor said, but man, he won't be able to walk on for long. Inside linebackers coach Barrett Ruud dubbed Reimers the surprise of camp at his position thus far. Ruud knew the former 8-man athlete from Kansas was fast, but he's been impressed by the on-field quickness and football movements. Not just anyone can be out of place within the defensive scheme and still find a way to make a stop on the same play. Across the room, meanwhile, NU's leading tackler from last